Hello, this is Gloomy Sunday, and once again, I will be sharing spooky stories that will send shivers down your thorny spine. Without further ado, let's begin tonight's creepy, spooky, and sometimes outlandish array of tales. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. When I was younger, my father shared a story with me about his encounter in Vietnam before the war started. He was about 7 years old at the time. My grandfather, my father, and his younger brother, who was only 4, went to the farm to harvest rice before the new year. The farm was across a small creek from a dark bamboo forest that always made my father feel uneasy. He had the constant sensation of being watched from the other side of the creek. Whenever my father looked across the creek, my grandfather would scold him to stay focused on the work, but my father's sense of unease persisted. As the sun began to set, my grandfather decided to stay at the farm for one more night. He instructed my father to start a fire for the night, but my father, scared, cried and begged his grandfather to leave. Despite his fear, my grandfather insisted on staying just one more night. As night fell, the usual sounds of birds and wind ceased, plunging the area into an eerie silence. My grandfather, who was a shaman, felt a chill down his spine, sensing that something was watching them. My younger uncle began to cry in fear, clinging tightly to my father. Though my grandfather didn't want to frighten the children, he knew something was wrong. He quietly prayed and lit incense to the ancestors and land spirits, asking for protection. Later that night, my father woke up to find frogs jumping on their feet. He saw my grandfather looking alarmed and frightened. My grandfather told my father to pack quickly and not to speak. He then woke up my uncle and carried him on his back. Without flashlights, they hurriedly packed and left the garden in the dark. My grandfather told them to walk as quickly as possible without looking back and to stay silent. As they left, my father heard a strange pig-like cry coming from the bamboo forest, which seemed to be getting closer. The unsettling sound made them walk even faster. By sunrise, they reached the village, exhausted. My father asked his grandfather what had happened. His grandfather explained that from the start, he had sensed a creature watching them from across the creek, but chose not to alarm the children. As night fell, he had chanted prayers for protection, unaware that the frogs jumping on my father's feet were actually a way for the creature to count how many people were present. My grandfather had also received a warning in a dream from the land's protector to flee, as the ancestors could not hold the creature back. The next day, my grandfather and some great-uncles returned to the farm with a few village dogs. The dogs reacted fearfully, barking at the creek. They had discovered human footprints leading from the creek to the hut and back. Black fur was found around the hut. Concerned about the unknown creature, my great-uncles decided it was best to avoid the garden from then on. That was a truly terrifying tale. It is good that none of them got hurt. I wonder if the creature wanted to eat them all. Now let's hear this next story, which I think will be a bit of a palate cleanser. In a quaint little town nestled between rolling hills in the country of Peru, a young girl named Jahaira had always dreamed of having a puppy. Her room was decorated with posters of fluffy canines, and she spent countless evenings sifting through dog care manuals and drawing pictures of her ideal pet. One sunny afternoon, that dream finally came true when her parents surprised her with a wriggling ball of fur, a black puppy named Piero. Piero was the epitome of sweetness, with big, expressive eyes and a wagging tail that wagged so hard it seemed to shake his entire body. For weeks, Jahaira and Piero were inseparable, sharing ice cream on the porch, exploring the forest behind her house, and even having tea parties in her bedroom. But as Piero began to grow, He developed an unusual appetite. Every time Jahaira took him for a walk, the neighborhood cats would mysteriously vanish. It worried her, but Pierrot's puppy kisses and wagging tail made her forget her concerns. Then things began to change even more dramatically. Jahaira's school life turned tumultuous as a group of bullies began tormenting her. Day by day, they would taunt her, lurking in the shadows, whispering and snickering. Jahaira confided in Pierrot during their afternoon walks.
"I just wish they would leave me alone,"
she sighed, petting him softly. One night, as the moon cast an eerie glow over the town, Jahaira awoke to strange sounds outside her window. Her heart raced as she peered through the curtains. She gasped in terror as she saw her bullies lurking near her front yard, laughing and jeering. Suddenly, a shadow burst from the woods, a medium-sized creature that looked like an oversized dog. It was Pierrot, but something was different about him. His eyes shone with an otherworldly glimmer. Before she could process what was happening, Pierrot lunged at the bullies, letting out a piercing, guttural growl that echoed in the night. The boys turned pale and fled as Pierrot chased after them, fear thundering in their feet. Jahaira stood frozen at the window, her heart pounding not just in fear, but in something darker, a thrilling excitement. The next morning, Jahaira found Pierrot curled up in his bed, innocent and harmless as ever, but she felt a change within herself. The incidents with the bullies continued, and each time Pierrot disappeared into the woods for a while, there was nothing but silence when he returned. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing evening, Jahaira began to feel a strange sense of pride when she saw the bullies retreating in terror at the sight of her once cuddly puppy. One fateful night, curiosity overtook her. She followed Pierrot into the woods, shadows dancing around her as the moon rose high. The path was overgrown, but as she slipped deeper into the thickets, she heard a cacophony of howls erupting in the night. Trembling with a mix of dread and intrigue, she crept closer, until she stumbled upon a clearing. What she saw left her breathless. Pierrot was surrounded by other wolves, their eyes shining as brightly as his. He stood dominant among them, transformed into a magnificent werewolf, blending beauty with raw power. As she gasped in awe, her presence caught Pierrot's attention. He padded towards her, gentler than expected, the moonlight casting a silvery glow over his majestic form.
"Pierrot?"
she whispered, her voice barely audible over the pounding in her chest. In that moment, she realized the truth. He wasn't just a puppy, but a protector, a creature of the night built for vengeance against those who dared to harm. Feeling a rush of exhilaration and affection, she stepped toward him, embracing him even though he was now so much larger, so much fiercer than before. Suddenly, the realization hit her like a wave. She wasn't scared of what he was anymore. Instead, she was filled with gratitude.
"You're my hero,"
she breathed, stroking his fur, which shimmered like onyx under the moonlight. In her heart, she felt an unbreakable bond tied to the creature she had always loved, vowing to protect him as he protected her. From that night on, Jahaira and Pierrot walked the thin line between the world of humans and the shadows, side by side. With Pierrot by her side, the bullies stopped trespassing into her life, returning only to warn others about Jahaira's fierce werewolf watchdog. As the seasons changed, Jahaira learned to embrace the duality of her puppy, part cute and cuddly, part fierce protector. In return for her unconditional love and loyalty, Pierrot kept watch over her, turning the nightmares into tales of valor, sealing their bond under the light of the moon, where horrors turned into strength and a girl found happiness in the most unexpected of creatures. Wow, that was a fun ride. I also love dogs and wouldn't mind having a werewolf as a pet. I don't know though if my cat, Soot will approve. Right, Soot. Now let's do a bonus story. This is a bit PG, so count this as your warning. We used to live in these old apartments in Sunnyvale, California. It was in this very ghetto area and we were very poor, so we stayed in an one-bedroom. There were 5 kids and my parents. After moving in, I met many relatives of ours who also lived in the apartment complex. These relatives of ours would tell us that the apartments are haunted and there are always ghosts or spirits wandering around at night. Of course, the ghost stories scared me. I was probably 7 or 8 at the time. All us kids all slept on a king bed, it was set high, and my parents just slept on a mattress on the floor. One night as we were all sleeping, I woke up to a noise, rubbed my eyes and saw these big shadows moving down below where my parents slept. They were moving so slow and I could hear them breathing. I couldn't really make out what the shadowy, dark blob was because it was really dark, so I got scared and slept with the covers over my head the whole night. The next morning I asked my siblings if they heard anything last night. They said no. The next night I was waiting for it, but I didn't see it. Then a couple of weeks later, I was awoken again by the same noise and saw the big blob, shadowy and dark figure that I saw last time. I couldn't make out to what it was and was too scared to go to it, so I just watched this shadow for a bit and fell asleep. The next morning I asked my parents about it. They told me it was nothing, and that I was dreaming. This would happen every now and then. At first I thought that maybe some ghosts or spirits had come and sat on my parents, and because my parents didn't want to scare me, they told me to ignore it. After about a couple of years or so later, my brother was born and I didn't see the scary shadows anymore. When I was a bit older, I realized that those scary shadows that I used to see at night were just my parents. I would see the scary big and dark blob and couldn't make out what it was because my parents had the blanket covering them. Gosh, my innocent brain. Oh my, that is the trouble when kids and the parents are in one bedroom. There's really no privacy. I am glad that he didn't see more, or it will be really emotional damage. I hope you enjoyed our spooky and strange stories. Join us next time for more. Take care and boo-bye.